This is it, the big one. With a fresh location and a new name, the desert race may have been somewhat different in recent years, but after skipping 2020, the Toyota Gazoo Racing SA 1000 Desert Race in Uppington certainly lived up to the reputation of the iconic event. All the action is proudly brought to you by Toyota Gazoo, Ford, Pirelli and Ural. The desert race has long been considered the jewel crown in the SACCS calendar, but the COVID pandemic meant that the 2020 edition of the race was cancelled. It was a blow to both the SACCS as well as the country of Botswana, who had hosted the race for decades. Places like Gaborone, Kumekwani, Manswabisi, Jwaneng and Salibi Pikway had become synonymous with the race. But in 2020, the COVID pandemic put paid to any chance of running the race, which had become the biggest sporting event in Botswana. This year, however, saw the race return to the schedule with both a new name and a new location. The now Toyota Gazoo Racing SA 1000 Desert Race took place in the area surrounding the northern Cape town of Uppington on the 18th to the 20th of June. But don't believe for 1 second that the race had gone soft by moving from Botswana to South Africa. As a matter of fact, the mix of terrain types had the crews battling the route as much as each other, which made for a highly exciting race. As ever, the desert race offered double points, thanks to its marathon format that saw 2 full days of racing over the weekend, in addition to a tough qualifying loop on the Friday. But before we get into round 3, let's take a quick look at the championship standings after the 2 opening rounds of the year. In the special vehicle category, it was Lance Trithui who was showing the competition a clean pair of heels. The competition in this case was defending champion Tim Howes, who found himself 25 points adrift after 2 rounds. Clint Gibson was in third. Class G saw Nico Durant leading the pack, 9 points clear of Cecil Lani, who was in turn 8 points ahead of Dean Bradbury. But the Class G pack is a competitive bunch, and the leaderboard was likely to see some changes. Over in the tin top category, Class T had Johan Horn in a commanding position after 2 wins, with Malcolm Koch in second place after 2 runner-up finishes for the season to date. Vos Prinsloo was in third and had Christo Rose hot on his heels. And finally, the big boys at the head of the field had veteran driver Janelle de Villiers in first place, with Lance Woolridge in the hunt behind him. Ernst Roberts was in third, with Mark Corbett in fourth. That's 4 different manufacturers for the first 4 spots. Clearly, an enticing battle was on the cards at the desert. With 1.5 times the amount of championship points on offer, the desert race has often been a turning point in the season, especially for those with championship aspirations. A good result here could boost you clear of the competition, but a poor showing could bring your dreams crashing down. For defending champion Henk Ladegan, the desert race offered a good opportunity to make up for sitting out round 1 of the season due to injury. The TGRSA driver would also be piloting a new version of the team's Hilux, now equipped with a 3.5-litre V6 twin-turbo engine.
Still learning the car. It's a bit of a different driving style, but I'm really enjoying it. It's a new challenge with new developments, so yeah, I'm having a lot of fun in it.
Teammate Janelle de Villiers arrived in Uppington as the leader in the Class FIA Championship and a slender deficit in the overall production vehicle category as well. For him, the emphasis was more on the new venue rather than Henk's new car.
Yeah, it's very nice, to come to a new area. We know the Uppington area from testing here for the Dakar, so it's going to be great to have a race here. First time that I've had a race here.
The TGRSA squad, which also included multiple former winner Shamir Variawa, was bolstered in Uppington with the addition of rally champion Guy Bottrell, who stood in for Ladegan at the beginning of the season. Now partnered with his usual rally navigator Simon Vasey-Lyle, the Durbanite was excited to be back in the squad.
It's unbelievable to get the call again. Real honor to race in the desert race for Toyota, in a Toyota. It's amazing.
And over in the blue corner, the Ford Castrol cross-country team's Lance Woolridge was under no illusions as to the task at hand, especially given the 2 DNFs they suffered at the previous round.
So we need to make amends for that and get a good haul of points this weekend.
Brother and teammate Gareth Woolridge was quick to point out that the cars had been rectified and improved since the Sugar Belt, and he too was looking forward to taking the fight to the hosts, Toyota.
Yeah, very excited to challenge at this race.
Toyota Hilux driver Chris Visser won the desert race last time around, but that was in Botswana. And Uppington was a whole different kettle of fish. Plenty of competition and an entirely different terrain from Selipi Pikwe had the big man on edge.
A lot of competition, yeah, and it's a little bit more open. I think with the older car, it suits the technical terrain a little bit more.
Class T Championship leader Johan Horn would have to do without his brother Werner at the desert race. He'd be this time paired with Leander Pienaar for this crucial event on the calendar.
We've raced before together and he did an excellent job. So yeah, I'm confident we'll have a good race.
On the special vehicle side, it was KZN's Lance Trathui leading the charge, and the big man was keen to put his Skolkberger Motorsport bat through the new route.
It's going to be tough. I think 1,000 k's of racing. We haven't done it for a while. So I think fitness is going to be a key for the competitors.
Class G had defending champ Nico Durant at the top of the table going into the desert race. The tough as nails Durant knew that his lead was a slender one, but he was ready to face his competitors in Uppington.
Just in front, but like you say, rather in front than not in front.
There was clearly a lot at stake in Uppington, but even more so for the competitors who had Dakar aspirations. The Road to Dakar is a race within a race that is supported by Toyota and has been run as part of the desert race for a number of years now. The competition is open to privateer crews who have never taken part in the Dakar Rally before, and this year saw no fewer than 10 eligible crews take up the challenge. These included cars from classes FIA and T, as well as special vehicles from classes A and G. Winning the Road to Dakar would give the crew a free entry into the world's toughest automotive race. And this year, the prize also included a cash amount of €8,000 towards enabling the winning crew to make it to the Dakar Rally. For the crews with an eye on the world's most iconic motor race, this was an opportunity not to be missed. With the clock heading towards noon on the Friday of the desert race, there was just one more formality to take care of. The SACCS, in conjunction with organisations like Potch Plastics, has supported the local communities and the areas it races in for many years now, and the School Shoe Initiative has become part of the series' traditions. This time around, children from the area around Uppington were the recipients of school shoes, especially welcome now that winter has arrived. The next order of business was the Pirelli qualifying race, which would be used to determine the starting order for the start of Saturday's main event. Route Director Evan Hutchison shortened the qualifying loop to just 105 kilometres of sand and rocks, ensuring a tough test for the crews. This would be just a taster though, as 2 more full days of racing would follow, each featuring 2 race loops of roughly 170 kilometres each. But first up, the qualifying race. The Pirelli qualifier was set to the northwest of Uppington, and the route comprised a mix of different terrains. Competitors would have to negotiate sandy tracks, hard-packed gravel, and even some dunes before heading back to town via a short liaison. The production vehicles largely survived the opening test, with Horst Prinsloo and Andre Vermeulen the only crew to fall by the wayside. Class S saw Jannie Visser and son Chris pip the father and son pairing of Piet and Benjamin Kotzer to the post. Both crews raced similar Toyota Hilux cars and were the only crews competing in the category. Ahead of them, the Class T pack was immediately locked in a tight battle, especially between Horn and Pienaar and the father and son crew of Malcolm and Frans Koch. In the end, it was Bernard Johnston and navigator Jan Harm Hugo who went third fastest, with the Kochs going nearly 4 minutes faster, but the pick of the Class T bunch was defending champion and current leader in the title chase, Johan Horn, in his Hilux.
But yeah, the car's good, the under was good. Let's see what happens.
But arguably, the biggest Barney was all set to take place in Class FIA. With Laudacher not only back in action, but also driving a fast new Toyota Hilux with turbo engine, there was a lot of pressure on the lad. Not only that, but the pair also had to open up the road, and the combination proved problematic. They suffered 2 punches and finished way down the order in 14th place overall. A similar fate befell teammate Bottrell and Vasey Lyle, leaving 2 of the TGRSA crews outside of the top 10. Further up the standings, the boys in blue were trading blows with their hosts in red. Woolridge and Vonk set the third fastest time in their Ford Racing Ranger, just 11 seconds behind the crew in second. Ahead of them, De Villiers and Murphy were the best of the TGRSA crews, going second fastest over the 105-kilometre route and trailing the winners of the qualifying race by a mere 9 seconds despite a puncture near the end of the loop.
Yeah, very fast, fast and flat out, but with some very tricky sections. Sometimes the navigation was quite tricky.
The top step of the qualifying podium belonged to none other than Gareth Woolridge and Boyd Dreyer in the second of the Class FIA Ford Rangers. The youngsters had an exceptional run, posting a total time of 1 hour, 5 minutes and 17 seconds over the course, and Pepin De Villiers to the win in the process.
I think our EcoBoost motor really helped us in the sand today. The Ranger was really, really strong, and we were shifting through the gears really quick, getting up to top speed, so it was a lot of fun.
Fourth fastest in the qualifying loop was defending Desert Race champion Chris Visser, now with Albertus Venter reading the notes. The top 5 was rounded out by Gary Berthold and Siegfried Rousseau, also in a Toyota Hilux. The 5 front runners separated by less than 1 minute. The special vehicle qualifier was an equally tumultuous affair. In Class P, however, there were only 2 crews competing, and it was Willem de Tooy and Victor Fincham who edged their opponents, Daniel Retief and Peter Karsten, to take the win. In Class G, the names of the regular top runners, Werner Mostert and Nico Durant, were conspicuously absent from the top 3 positions. Instead, the names of Cecil and Aladis Lani in the G13 Can-Am snuck onto the podium when they posted the third fastest time. They had Theo Erasmus and Edward Odendahl just 1 minute and 4 seconds in front of them, but the big win in the qualifier went to Kent and Justin Rutherford in their G33 Can-Am. The combined age of the two is younger than that of many of the competitors in the field. And whilst Kent has been steadily improving as a driver, this was his first pole position behind the wheel. Some say he may be even faster than his dad, who now heads up the SACCS.
The ruts are very, very deep. It's thick sand and you get dirty. As you can see, my face, I'm full of sand, and it was tricky, but we managed to get to the end.
At the head of the Class A field, it was defending Desert Race champions and current log leaders, Lance Trethuri and Adrian Roots, who went fastest yet again, their third pole on the trot.
But we're happy where we are, and we've got to just get some tyres and change some tyres, and then let's see how we go tomorrow.
They had teammates Bula Buertas and Jay Pretorius 4 minutes and 10 seconds behind them, with Clint Gibson and Alaric Smith rounding out the top 3 spots in Class A. So let's briefly recap those results from the all-important Pirelli qualifying race. Class FIA saw the Ford Ranger of Woolridge and Dreyer top the standings, 9 seconds clear of De Villiers and Murphy in their Toyota Hilux. The second of the Class FIA Ford Rangers, crewed by Woolridge and Vonk, was in third place, nipping at the heels of the Toyota in the middle. Johan Horn got his Desert Race off to a perfect start, placing the Class T Toyota Hilux more than 1 minute and 30 seconds ahead of the Cox Ford Ranger in second. Johnston and Hugo went third fastest in qualifying, and Class S had the Fissers just over 12 minutes clear of the Kotzes. Over in the special vehicle category, Trethuri and Roots continued their relentless assault on the championship, going a full 4 minutes and 10 seconds faster than second place, Buertas and Pretorius. Gibson and Smith were a further 50 seconds back in third. The battle in Class P saw de Tooy and Fincham going fastest, with Retief and Karsten more than 16 minutes back. And in Class G, it was a first pole for Kent Rutherford, and with his younger brother reading the notes in the desert, they were 3 minutes and 13 seconds ahead of Erasmus and Odendahl, who were more than 1 minute ahead of the Lanis in third. With that, the opening day of the 2021 TGRSA 1000 Desert Race drew to a close in Uppington. As the sun set, the temperatures dropped and the teams hunkered down for the night. Next up, the first 2 full days of racing over an exciting mix of terrain. Stay tuned for more SACCS action from the Northern Cape. Welcome back to the Northern Cape town of Uppington, the capital of South Africa's very own outback and the new home of the most iconic motor race on the African continent. We've already seen some action in the 2021 edition of the Toyota Gazoo Racing 1000 Desert Race, but that was only the qualifying race on the Friday of the event. This was race day, and around 900 kilometers of Kalahari desert track still had to be tackled by the crews in all the various classes. The still relatively new Ford Castrol cross-country Team Ranger of Gareth Woolridge and Boyd Dreyer made it look easy by winning the qualifying race the day before, but they would face a new challenge on race day, as they were the first ones to be waved off. They were followed by the Toyota Gazoo Racing SA Hilux of stalwart, Janelle de Villiers and Dennis Murphy, who had every intention to chase down the Ford. They were in turn chased by the second Ford Ranger, the one driven by the older Woolridge brother, Lance, and Alvin Vonk in the navigator seat. Next up were a string of Hiluxes. The first one, driven by Chris Visser and Albertus Venter, ahead of the similar machine of Gary Berthold and Siegfried Rousseau. And then the first of the Class T cars, the Malalan Toyota Hilux of Johan Horn and Leander Pienaar reading the notes. In fact, with more than 40 crews entered and each leaving in 2-minute intervals, it took a good 80 minutes to get everyone off the line. By the time the last crews headed off into the desert, we could start to focus our attention to the front of the field to work out who was doing what. And the men on the move were none other than defending cross-country champions Henk Lautachan and Brett Cummings in the brand new turbo-powered Toyota Gazoo Racing SA Hilux. Lautachan lost 3 minutes during the qualifying race the day before, but the talented driver slowly closed the gap with each passing kilometre to pick off his rivals one by one. As they neared the end of Loop 1, Lautachan passed the leading car on the score sheet to move into the overall lead of the race. Up to that point, the lead belonged to teammates de Villiers and Murphy, who weren't hanging back either. A puncher, however, did slow them down a touch as they fought hard to keep a hard-charging Chris Visser and Albertus Venter at bay.
We had a puncture with about 10 k's to go, so I had to sort of crawl towards the end.
The Freiburg farmer got to within a minute and a half after Loop 1, but he too lost valuable time in Loop 2 that dropped him down the order. As expected, the task of opening up the road got the better of Gareth Woolridge in the Castrol Ford Ranger, who dropped down to 7th place.
I think possibly one of our tyres rolled off the rim in the dunes. Straight after the dunes we had a flat, so we changed that.
With one Woolridge running into trouble, it was up to the other to take the fight to the Toyotas. And that's exactly what Lance Woolridge did as he ended the day's racing in 4th, hot on the heels of de Villiers. But it was a tough fight indeed, because Toyota had another ace up their sleeve in the form of Shamir Variawa and Donnie Stassen. Variawa, who started in 7th, is a previous winner of the desert race, and it showed as he climbed all the way up the leaderboard into a credible 5th place.
Oh no, this is what I love. I love this type of terrain.
Behind Variawa, Visser eventually ended the day in 6th, ahead of the younger Woolridge brother in his Ford. At the end of 500 kilometers of racing, there were only 22 seconds separating the Woolridge Ford from the hard-charging Redline Motorsport VK56 car of Zimbabwean Konrad Rautenbach and co-driver Rian Kraling. Rautenbach is an accomplished motorsportsman who was eager to add a good result at the desert to his list of achievements. There was a little bit of daylight between Rautenbach and the second Redline Motorsport VK56, driven by Ernst Roberts and Henry Kerner, who brought their car home in 9th place overall. But more importantly for Roberts, he was leading the Road to Dakar Challenge. But more about that later. And then to round out the top 10, both in Class FAA and overall, were Guy Bottrell and Simon Vasey-Lyle, who got to grips with the desert race for the first time ever. And just as everyone thought they had seen the results on the first day of the famed desert race, it happened. Almost out of nowhere, the names of Brian Baragwanath and Leonard Kramer appeared near the top of the leaderboard. The Century Racing CR6 crew started the day down in 11th position, but like Lautachan, the talented Baragwanath was on a mission. He improved from 11th all the way up to 5th after the first of the day's 2 loops. But the Pretoria-based driver set a blistering pace on the second loop. It became clear that he would challenge for the lead as they were now nearing the end. The day's racing had turned into a 2-horse race between Toyota Gazoo Racing and Century Racing, the new petrol turbo-powered Hilux versus the monstrous CR6 buggy. Lautachan versus Baragwanath. Between the two, they put up a great display of driving skills in the desert, and when the flag was waved to signal the end of day 1, it was Lautachan who emerged victorious by a mere 22 seconds, and all that after 500 kilometers of racing in the desert. And here it is, the Class FIA results after 100 kilometers of the qualifying on Friday and around 400 kilometers of racing on the Saturday of the Toyota Desert 1000 race. And it shows that Latachan will lead into the overnight, just 22 seconds ahead of Baragwanath, with De Villiers currently in the number 3 spot ahead of Woolridge and Variawa. But let's catch up with the two flyers.
It was nice to be on the button, no mistakes, not getting out of the car, so nice and clean.
I started overheating a little bit in the June, so I had to back off for about 6Ks. We had to take it a bit easy, the car was getting hot.
Those were the standings in the Premier FIA class, who also occupied the overall top positions. They were, however, closely followed by Class T, the class for similar-looking buckies, but with slightly more restrictions, making them a touch slower than the FIA and Dakar machines. But after a day and a half's worth of racing, it was indeed the Malalan Toyota Hilux that topped the scoreboards yet again. Johan Horn has been exceptionally fast throughout the season, and although he had to do it without his brother Werner for the weekend, standing co-driver Leander Pienaar was obviously doing a sterling job. Horn's lead was around 11 minutes over the father and son pairing of Malcolm and Frans Koch in the NWM Ford Ranger, who were also doing their best to stay in touch. They were followed by another NWM Ranger driven by Bernard Johnston and Jan Harm Hugo, whilst a fourth Ranger in the hands of Vos Prinsloo and Andre Vermeulen were doing a great job of making up for lost time after failing to finish the qualifying race the day before. Youngster Dylan Venter and Vince van Alleman found the going tough with a few setbacks that forced the 4x4 Mega World Hilux down the order. They were classified 5th at the end of the day, that saw another NWM entry retire from the race when Bapi Rabaluza and Fani Mayiwa crashed their Ranger over a dune and were out of the race. Besides Class FIA and Class T, the production car category also saw 2 Class S entries in the form of cross-country racing stalwart Yannick Visser and son Chris Visser Jr., and a second father and son combination of local farmer Piet and Benjamin Kotzer. And it was Visser who had the upper hand at the halfway mark of the 21 Toyota 1000 Desert Race. So these were the standings for Class T and S in the production vehicle category. And as we just saw, Visser led Kotzer in Class S, whilst Fenter rounded out the top 5 for T, behind Prinsloo and Johnston. The Cox were doing well in second, but it was Johan Horn who topped the timesheets with a fairly comfortable margin despite having a fair few issues.
It was tough. There's lots of hidden rocks that appeared in the second loop and you couldn't see them.
The SACCS really does provide something for everyone. That was as much of the action as we could fit in to cover the production vehicle categories. So let's move our attention to the battle in the special vehicles. If you want big and powerful, then Class A is where you want to be. It's also the home turf for the big dog, Lance Trethuri and navigator Adrian Ruertz, who are having a dominant season so far in 2021 from behind the wheel of their Skalkberger Motorsport Bat Venom. Trethuri comfortably won the qualifying race the day before, and halfway through day one, it seemed like the big dog was once again fully in control of the race. There was carnage behind him though, as a number of top competitors became victims of the Kalahari sand and the rocks. The long list of retirees included the Farmers Meat striker of Lourdes de Pria and Tian Swat, as well as the older bats of Kurbis Fari and Dion Boyson, who were both forced to call it a day. The Skalkberger Motorsport Porter, driven by Bula Boertes and Jay Pretorius, didn't make it much further. And the Bat Spec 4 of defending Class A champions Tim Howes and Gary Campbell were also forced to retire. Sandra Labaskafny-Yonk and husband Jaco did, however, survive the first day in the desert and brought their Porter home in 4th place after a tough day in the office. The Yonks were still in striking distance of an overall podium position, as they were only 11 minutes behind the current 3rd place crew of stalwarts John Thompson and navigator Marisa Matten, who managed to reach the halfway mark of the desert race in a fine 3rd place in their Zarco Challenger. But there was some space between them and the crew who managed to finish 2nd on the Saturday. This crew was none other than Clint Gibson and Alaric Smith. Their striker needed a total of just over 6 hours and 10 minutes to complete both the qualifying race as well as the 2 loops on Saturday, which meant there was no doubt as to who completed the day in first. The big dog tells us how he topped the charts.
Yeah, it was much better for us on the second lap. You know, obviously the berms had formed after the time trial loop, and it made it we could go much faster.
Class P only saw 2 entries. The Century Racing CRTs driven by Daniel Retief and Peter Costin, and local Uppington hero Willem de Toy and Victor Fincham. Unfortunately for de Toy, his race was cut short when his car encountered gearbox problems, leaving the road open for Daniel Retief to take command of Class P. And finally, an opportunity to bring you all the action from Class G, where Nico Durant and Greg Parkin tried their best to maintain their overall championship lead. For the youngest crew to ever compete in a national event, the Rutherfords of Kent and Justin could not reach the finish on Saturday, and that was a big blow to their first desert race. The same fate befell Jeff Minnitt and Gerrit Snyman. So who did survive the desert dunes? The Mostert brothers of Werner and Leon were certainly pre-race favourites, but they too suffered setbacks, including a 5-hour penalty that dropped them down the order. For Nico Durant, who was trying to defend his slender lead in the championship chase, he could only manage a 4th, around an hour set by the pace of title rivals Dean Bradbury and Timmy Burtis, who completed the day in 3rd. It was fairly close between the top trio as the Lani brothers, Cecil and Aladis, finished the day on a time of 7 hours and 4 minutes, or around 6 minutes ahead of the Bradburys. It was fast, but not fast enough to go to bed as overall race leaders, as this honour belonged to Theo Erasmus and Edward Odendahl, who stopped the clock on 6 hours and 59 minutes exactly. Erasmus took it easy, missed the rocks, and was happy to go to bed as overnight leader.
Yeah, there was plenty of rocks and the big cars. They opened the road up, so all those rocks is coming out.
So another big win for Big Lance in the special vehicle category ahead of Gibson. Retief was in control of Class P, and Erasmus had a 5-minute advantage over Lani and the rest of the Warriors in Class G. And all of that was only the first half of the 2021 Toyota Gazoo Racing 1000 Desert Race. Tomorrow, they can do it all over again, but this time on fresh tracks to the south of Uppington. Tune in next week for Race 2, as well as the conclusion of the most iconic motor race on the African continent. All the action was proudly brought to you by Toyota Gazoo, Ford, Pirelli and Ural.